Let's see how we make fertilizers work for us. This is a picture of the corner of our yard. It's things that I'm most proud of, my granddaughters and my roses. We're going to go through here and tell you what the plant itself is made is consists of. 95% of all plants, roses included, are oxygen, carbon, and hydrogen, and most of this comes from the air and the water. Then we have what we call the macronutrients. Believe it or not, the 95% that we saw a while ago, the largest percentage here is nitrogen, and it's only 2%. The plant's only consists of 2% nitrogen. Potassium is only 1%. Calcium, and these are macronutrients. These are the main nutrients. Calcium's 0.6%, magnesium 0.3%, phosphorus is 0.5%, sulfur 0.4%. What do these nutrients do? Well, nitrogen, when it's in balance in the soil, stimulates growth, produces dark green foliage, good blooms, and tall, strong canes. Be careful though, too much nitrogen, you'll start seeing your canes become weak, they're soft, your blooms become smaller, and they'll be decreased plant resistant to disease. What's phosphorus do? Well, phosphorus, I've been told, is everywhere in our soil. It naturally occurs in the soil, and it stimulates root growth. It helps produce quality plants, big blooms. It also aids in plant maturity, and inside the plant it regulates energy transfer. But the downside is it moves very slowly through the soil, and most of us, when we plant our roses, add either bone meal or superphosphate around the root zone so it's readily available to the plant. pH is a big factor in controlling the availability of phosphorus to the plant. Your pH for phosphorus to work it needs to be between 6.3 and 6.8. We'll get more into that a little later. Then you have potassium. That's the on a fertilizer bag. It's the K. Potassium promotes root growth, plant vigor. It helps with bloom color. It also counters the harmful effects of excessive nitrogen. And the book says it's essential for starch formation and development of chlorophyll, so it helps green the plant up. Too much will interfere with the intake of other elements such as magnesium and calcium. Potassium also readily leaches from the soil, so you've got to be careful not to let it get too low. It's also stored in the leaves. Sulfur lowers pH. When your soil becomes a little too alkaline, you can add sulfur to it. It's a raw material for amino acids and proteins that's for plant health. Magnesium promotes chlorophyll formation and greener foliage. Going back to sulfur a second, I added a note here that it's present in organic materials. So when you're in your fertilizer program, make sure that you're using a lot of organic materials, so you'll have sulfur available to the plant. Magnesium and calcium are mainly stored in the plant leaves. And calcium is the element that holds the cell walls together and promotes early growth Right now, you probably have a lot of calcium in your soil, or should have. And you've got the micronutrients. You got most of these have less than 0.05%. That's part of the plant. Iron aids in chlorophyll formation. Manganese helps in photosynthesis. Zinc stimulates stem growth. Boron helps in flower formation. Copper helps in stem development and pigment. And molybdenum stimulates plant growth and vigor. I want to tell you, I want to be truthful about this. I was a C student in biology. And where I've learned most of this, what I've just recited to you, came from the Consultant Rosarian manual. If anyone's interested in learning, the biology of how all this interacts and how the different elements interact with each other, because a lot of them are symbiotic, and you have to have this for this to work, and not so much of that for other things not to work. If you really want to learn a lot about that, if you're a member of the American Rose Society, you can go on the member section and get into the Consulting Rosarian manual, and there's 20 pages of what this is all about and how it works. If you're not a member of the American Rose Society and want to learn about it, Baxter, I'd like you to tell us that there's trial memberships available.
Yes, if you'd like to become an American Rose Society member for free for 90 days, you can do that by going on to their website, and we have a link on our website that will get you there. Or just tell us you want it, we'll turn your name in, and you'll instantly become an American Rose Society member. At the end of that 90-day period, they covet your long-term membership and would like for you to go ahead and pay dues for a year or more and become one novice. It'll be the best horticultural money you ever spent.
And of course, there's much more on the website than just the Consulting Rosarian manual. Other than that, we can always ask Dan Lawler, who is he can teach us all a thing or two about the biology of plants. So maybe we'll have you on a program one of these. All right. What are the types of fertilizer? Well, first of all, you have your synthetically produced. These are mainly your granulars and others. They're listed by their percentages of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. That's on every package. And a lot of the fertilizer, these granular fertilizers, have micronutrients as well. They're immediately available to the plant, and they last 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a little longer. But synthetic fertilizers are salts. They can interfere with the plant to obtain water, so you've got to be real careful about making sure that you water well before you put granular fertilizer down. Next, we have the slow-release synthetics like Osmocote. They're coated with the sulfur resins. You can apply 2 to 3 times a year, but the release of the nutrients are dependent on temperature and water content of the soil. Upside, it reduces chances of fertilizer burn, but you've got to be careful on late applications because you don't want your plants to be blooming in December. They need to be resting about that time. I've used the Osmocote early when I started growing roses back in '81, and I only used them in these whiskey barrels, and I don't think I did something right because I just like to have a little more control over what I'm doing than relying on what the breakdown of the Osmocote was. But to each his own. Then we have the water-soluble fertilizers like Miracle Grow and Carl Pools and the HRS has their own water-soluble fertilizer that you can spray it on the foliage or you can drench the soil. There's so many different formulations. Depends on what you want to do at what time of year. This time of year, the HRS formula is pretty good because it's got it's high in nitrogen, gets the plant up and going. They're usually, I use the water solubles in addition to a complete fertilizer program. It's supplemental feeding, and we'll get to that here in a minute. They're excellent tonics to use during rainy spells when you have a lot of rain. Throw quick water soluble on your plants to take care of what's leached out. I recommend the water solubles exclusively for container feeding and miniatures and mini floors. Again, we'll get to that in a minute. Then we have the organic fertilizers. They come from once living organisms, but they're low in nutrient content. They're very slow in releasing nutrients to the plant, and the soil's got to be warm for the organics to work. They have high levels of carbon, and the upside, they add humus to the soil. You're feeding the soil while you're feeding the plant. And they also counter salt buildup that you get from the synthetic fertilizers. Here's some of the common organic materials. Fish emulsion or fish meal. It's a good source of nitrogen. Alfalfa meal or pellets. The alfalfa contains hormones that stimulate growth. It's one called trichotinol, and it really works. I guess we all like to see our roses with new shoots coming, basal shoots, and the alfalfa is good for that. Then you got cottonseed meal. It's very acidic, but it's balanced in the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Blood meal, it's a rich source of nitrogen, and iron is a trace element in blood meal. Then you've got manures. We use those basically as a soil conditioner because the nutrient content is very low. You got to be careful in applying it because it's harmful to it can be harmful to the plants and humans. As you can see, it harbors harmful bacteria. And then we have compost and mulches that conditions the soil and aids in moisture conservation. Okay. This is things that we need to look for. Nitrogen deficiencies. Your leaves turn light green, almost to yellow but they'll stay on the plant. They won't fall off. You'll see weak, spindly stems and small flowers. The leaf sizes are reduced and you'll have poor growth. When you have an oxygen deficiency, veins of the leaves, and I'll show you this in a minute, veins of the leaf will show yellowing, and that's caused by lack of air to the roots. So overwatering or your compaction of soil is critical not to have it. Iron deficiency, the leaf veins remain green, the rest of the leaf turns yellow. Magnesium, the leaf edges turn brown. You see, magnesium deficiency almost looks like leaf burn. And potassium deficiency, the leaf margins turn brown. That's very rare.
James, you mentioned oxygen deficiency. Can you tell us how to get oxygen back down into your soil?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that here in a little bit.
Okay.
Did that come out very well? As you can see, the nitrogen deficiency, you got a light pale green, and sometimes it'll turn yellowish like this with a nitrogen deficiency. I wanted to point out the difference between the oxygen and iron deficiency. These three right here, the nitrogen, oxygen, and iron deficiency, people get these confused all the time. The main thing to look for when you've got an oxygen deficiency in a plant is that the leaf veins have turned yellow. With iron deficiency, the leaf veins are green. A lot of people get those confused, so you don't want to be treating the wrong thing when if you're confused by it. Contact the CR, as they'll be able to point that out. And of course, nitrogen, that light yellow, light green to yellow is very obvious. But they stay on the plant, and the veins are also remain green. And there are some other examples of other deficiencies. You may see sometimes you'll see something like this. Magnesium, a lot of times you'll see a magnesium deficiency. And that's one of the reasons why I use the water solubles in between feedings of granular fertilizers. Okay, you were asking about what happens when you have an oxygen deficiency. Well, your soil should be loose and friable. Should contain a good mix of inorganic and organic materials. But sometimes they do get compacted. What I do when that happens is go around the plant with a spading fork, kind of in a circular fashion, and put the spading fork all the way in the ground. If most of us know what a spading fork, it's got four tines. It kind of looks like a pitchfork, but the tines are wider. Stick that all in the ground and just kind of loosen it up, and that should break it up and also help with your drainage. The inorganic part of the soil is made up of sand, silt, and clay. Sand is your largest particle, and it allows for good drainage and airspace. Silt is what breaks down from the sand. They're medium-sized particles. They're formed as the sand breaks down and starts forming into clay. And of course, the clay is very small particles. And it's important that you have some clay in there because it helps the soil's ability to hold the nutrients. The organic part of the soil is made up of living and dead portions. Of course, the dead portions are decomposing organic material, and that results in humus. Humic acid aids in breaking down inorganic materials. The living portion, of course, is bacteria, fungi, algae, nematodes, bugs, earthworms, etc. Foliage, you need to keep disease resistance, as we said earlier. A lot of the nutrients are stored in the leaves, so if you have diseased foliage, the plant's trying to fight that off, and it's not really doing what it needs to be doing. And the pH, the ideal pH should be between 6 and 6.5 for the nutrients to be available to the plant. As I said, this chart right here shows you where the different nutrients are mainly available to the plant. As you can see, in that range at 6 to 6.5, all of them are available to the plant. If you go in this direction, you start losing your copper and zinc, and mainly your iron and manganese. If you go in the other direction, you quickly lose the availability of your phosphorus. So that 6 to 6.5 is fairly critical. All right, we're going to get to what I do. I'm going to start off by mentioning that look around the room, and there's a lot of excellent rosarians in this room, and this is what I do. They may disagree with this. They may think there's a different way. That's fine. They're excellent rosarians, but this is the way I do it, and I think I grow pretty good roses.
Yeah, they're okay. Is that a bush that's just been pruned?
All right, yeah, we have just pruned this bush, and immediately after pruning, I water well, and then I start applying my granular fertilizers. The frequency rate is between 4 to 6 weeks, and that's dependent on the weather and rain and heat and things like that, depending on what the intervals are. My recommended granulars for roses are Nelson's Color Star, the 1913-6, and I do that at 1 cup per bush. Another cheaper way to go is Nitrophos, which is 1812-6, and I do that at 2 tablespoons per bush. I normally start off with the Color Star, and then my subsequent applications are Nitrophos until we get into the fall application. Then I go back to the Color Star. I add organics, like I used to add alfalfa and fish meal and manures and all this other stuff. What I have come to do is I've gotten older and lazier. I use Southwest Earth Essentials, and Southwest Earth Essentials have alfalfa, cottonseed meal, they got bone meal, they got blood meal, I think they've got a little bit of Epsom salts in there. So that is what I recommend, instead of mixing up your own organics, using all these other things.
Question.
Yes, sir.
How soon after your Color Star or Nitrophos do you then add the?
I add them at the same time.
Same time.
In the spring, I'll put the granulars down, and right on top of it, I'll put the Southwest Earth Essentials down, as well as the Epsom salts. I only add the Epsom salts twice a year. That's after pruning, and then right around the first part of September. That's to that also aids in new growth, but it also greens up your plants because magnesium, like you said, aids in chlorophyll production.
How
James?
much Southwest Essentials?
I put a couple of cups around each big bush
Okay.
and a handful around the miniatures. If you see where a plant is suffering from iron chlorosis, treat just that plant with iron, chelated iron. Most rosarians use Sprint 330 Fe, which is a good product. Mix it in water at a tablespoon per gallon and just pour it around the plant. Don't, in hot weather, do not pour Sprint on your leaves. Don't foliar feed that because it will burn. Here's your question answered right there, Patsy. Make sure the soil doesn't become compacted. If so, open space with spading for it. Some people apply gypsum. I don't do that, but I know people that do. And then between each granular feeding, I apply water-soluble fertilizers. Early in the year, a high nitrogen, but when it becomes time for the plant to start producing blooms, I use the Carlpool's 10-50-10. There's other manufacturers like Super Bloom, I think made by Greenlight. There's Super Grow or whatever. You're looking for something that has a middle number where the plant picks up that phosphorus in a hurry and creates a larger bloom. I also mix that with fish emulsion. Okay, I don't put any granulars on my miniatures or mini floras or containers. You only use the water-soluble fertilizers. And I failed to mention, not only do I put the Carlpool's or Miracle Grow with fish emulsion, I also add a product called Super Thrive at a 1/4 teaspoon per gallon. And every once in a while I'll throw in some seaweed extract, just for, somebody said it was good, so I'm throwing it in.
It has a lot of micronutrients also.
It's micronutrients, so it's got potassium as well, right?
As well, yeah.
I drank a whole bottle of that stuff, didn't taste it.
You should have fried it.
You should do it.
You should have fried it. We alternate fish emulsion feedings with inorganic water solubles. And apply Epsom salts in solution only in the early spring and fall. What I normally do with the miniatures and mini floras is put about a tablespoon or two of Epsom salts in a gallon of water and pour that right into the right around the plant. Let's see, Baxter. Okay, and after I'm finished with that initial granular, putting down the initial fertilizer, the granulars and the organics, then I add my mulch. And then again, I replenish that in late summer because in our heat, the mulch breaks down fairly quickly.
What type of mulch?
I use hardwood. I think Patsy told me she uses pine bark.
Yes, we do.
I think pine bark is a little more acidic, but
Had no problems.
yeah. I've got 2 gardens. One's at my office, and I've had that one there since probably for 10 years. And these are some. I put them there when I decided to start showing roses because where I had it at my old house, I had a community garden where everybody picked the roses, and by the time the rose show came around, there wasn't anything left to bring in. And this is my home garden. This was last year's rose tour. This is a rose called the Fern. This one is Veterans Honor, St. Patrick. This garden over here I started 2 years ago, and they're all fragrant roses in there. I was missing some of the fragrance, so I decided to put those in. And here's some more pictures. That's that one there is Hot Princess. There's a Moonstone. There's that red is Let Freedom Ring. Another Louise Estes there. This is another view from the other side. Here's a garden up front in my side yard. These are all mini floras. That's a Louisville lady. Mary, you're growing that, right? Abby's Angel. I won a queen at the district show in San Antonio a few years ago. And, Baldo Villegas and Shameless. And if anybody can tell me the difference between those two plants, please speak up.
And you've got them side by side?
Here's Baldo Villegas.
Okay.
This is Shameless. I have to label them when I'm taking them into show because I can't tell the difference.
You can't tell the difference, neither can the
This is up front. This is a couple of Julia Child. Here's the Edtide, very fragrant rose, lava glue. This one, I wish he was here tonight. I couldn't be here, but this is a shrub called Deanna. It's named after our Deanna. Kraus, it's a single striped rose, very pretty, very big. By fall, it takes over most of the garden. One of these days, I'm going to get the energy to dig this stuff up.
It wants to grow like a climber. Do you let it branch out like that?
Yeah, it's more like a rambler. But
Yeah.
Here's another view of the whole yard. Got a pretty nice view there. And there they are again. That's my little darlings. I don't know. They were helping us on our rose tour until they got tired, so they had to relax. Any questions?
What was the rose to the right in that last picture?
Which one?
The one on the right.
This one?
Yes.
red one.
No, sorry, white.
This one right here?
Yeah.
That one's a Griffith bud rose called Quietness. We won one of those at a seminar way back when and gave it to my mother-in-law, and she lost it. And so we liked it when we saw it, so we planted it in this garden here. So it's also very fragrant. Behind that is, it's hard to tell the difference, but that's Moonstone, and this is another Hot Princess. This one here is a floribunda called Our Lady of Guadalupe. Yes, ma'am.
So every soil sample I've ever turned in comes back saying that it's way too much phosphorus and you need to discontinue phosphorus for the next 10 years. And I've tried that and it didn't help at all. And then they also say, they act like I've never put nitrogen on the beds ever. So what I'm wondering is, you said something early in the program about phosphorus is counteracted by something.
Superphosphate.
I forgot what I said. Like I told you, I got all this out of the book.
The very beginning.
I think it's, you mentioned that you need superphosphate to release, to help the phosphorus.
Because it doesn't move in the soil, you have to have it around the roots until the roots.
Superphosphate?
Superphosphate
And bone meal.
or bone meal.
I thought superphosphate was also phosphorus. It's not the same thing?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
But when you plant it, the roots, it's not available because the roots haven't got to it yet. And because it promotes root growth, you want it close to the roots at first, so it finds the phosphorus that's already in the soil.
But what I'm saying is, so you're being told you have too much phosphorus in the soil, and you can never get rid of it. So how do you get rid of it? That's the question.
Oh, well,
It will go away, but it takes 5 to 10 years. And the problem most people don't realize is phosphorus is in every gardening product that's on the shelf. Because the manufacturers know that you expect plants to be beautiful and productive, and so they put phosphorus in the products to make blooms or fruit.
You're talking about including organic only products?
Huh?
Including organic only?
Organics are the worst.
With
Organic
phosphorus in it?
are the worst to have high levels of phosphorus.
but they also have sulfur in it, so you have to put them in there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a,
Catch-22.
yeah, I mean, you gotta have them in there for all the rest of it to work.
That's true.
Several years ago, we had that phosphorus toxicity at the American Rose Center in Shreveport, and the only solution was to take the soil out of the beds and put new soil in. It's the only way we got it, but we realized that trying to ameliorate that problem is not going to help anytime soon. I have a question.
Would you mind going back to the slide for the container, your recipe for containers? And then
Okay.
so on these, do you put the alfalfa, like you were saying, on the bushes? Do you put it right on top of the water soluble and then do it at the same time?
Yeah, you can do it at the same time. The organics break down so slow that your water solubles act quickly, and so you're feeding the soil with the organics, so you can put those down any time that you put down the other fertilizers.
I think one thing that you will want to do if you apply alfalfa pellets and whatnot on your top of your bed, just as soon as you put it down, you're going to want to put your mulch on top of it. Otherwise, you lose a lot of that content. The nitrogens will boil out of it if you just leave it exposed to the moisture. So you really need to go ahead and cover it with the mulch as soon as you put it down.
It
That's
doesn't
why
get fragrant with the mulch.
Yeah, that's why we usually put that on the bed right after we prune, and we'll put that and other things that we'll want there, and then we'll right away put the pine bark on top of that.
You know, and like Patsy said, once alfalfa gets wet, it's pretty nasty smelling.
Earth Essentials do too.
Yeah, well, it's got even,
Yeah.
it's got the blood meal and everything else in it that also smells.
Green noses.
Yeah, well, I'm not real popular with my neighbors when I start putting down some of the organics, but they like the cutting roses for them.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'd like to say, first off, wonderful program. The phosphorus, we found most of the daily growers around the country have gone to raised beds, 12 to 14,
That's all
16,
it
18
is.
inches, and they don't have a problem with phosphorus buildup any longer. Second, this is the product that I'm using to fertilize, the azomite and the Nutristar, the 18-14-10. January, I sprayed a horticultural from Carpool Vitazyme, which is a biostimulant, has the trichotinol, the racinosteroids, basically works on the cellular level and causes you to have a bigger root system. February, I cut everything daylilies down to 4 inches, And one time with this around Valentine's Day, and then 2 weeks later, I sprayed a solution of Miracle Grow, liquid iron, Epsom salt, fish emulsion, and horticultural molasses. I'll make 10 gallons of solution at 1 tablespoon each, and I spray it out at 1 tablespoon per gallon twice before May, and then after May, I don't fertilize anything until the following January.
Is this all your blooming plants?
Everything in the yard, amaryllis, all the plants that I'll be getting next month, dianthus, petunias, I feed everything the same. And everything so far for the last 4 to 5 years seems to really like it. The fish emulsion, my neighbor has said something, hey, your yard smells kind of fishy every once in a while.
You don't have a fall rose show, do you? You don't have a fall rose show to condemn with?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
You know, what I normally do, I'll trim the roses a little bit that I have in the daylily beds, basically so I don't get punctured to death when I go to cut daylily foliage in the fall. Otherwise, I'll cut my roses about the same time, first part of February, as soon as it kind of warms a little bit. And so far, I've had any problem. They really like what I'm giving them.
I don't know that I mentioned it, and I know it was in my notes, but you mentioned your raised beds, and I mean, you have to have good drainage for roses. They like moisture, but they don't like to be sitting in water.
Yeah.
So it is essential to have raised beds, and if that helps with the phosphorus issues, then I'm glad to hear that.
We think so far that what the scientific studies have gone, that does have a correlation. Now, I redid my beds in November with soil from the ground up, which is a company out off of 249 in Windfern by the horse track. And it's my beds right now are so fluffy, I can actually take and shove my hand from the bottom of the bed to the top, or vice versa. Even after the rains, it won't compact. So yeah. I'm hoping it stays that way for several years.
And that's good as long as you don't lose all your nutrients. Sometimes you get it too fluffy, if you know what I mean. You got to have something that holds the nutrients in there. But at the same time, if you got too much clay, then you have your oxygen deficiency issues. So. Yes, sir.
How long, say you walk out and you think you've diagnosed what the micronutrient deficiency is, by either the veins turning yellow, or the leaf turning yellow and whatnot, so you take action and treat for it. How long does it take for you to see if you've made the right diagnosis and have done the right thing? I mean, you know, about a week or a couple of weeks?
It depends on which deficiency you're talking about. Nitrogen deficiency, normally you can cure that fairly quickly with water-soluble fertilizer that's high in nitrogen. The oxygen deficiency, if you get some air to the roots, then you'll see that perk up as well. Your iron is a little different. It takes a few weeks. So.
Are you saying it just takes a few days to stick that fork down in there and whittle it and then see green?
No, that's the oxygen. We're talking about the iron.
I know, but how long after you've done something, how long does it take you to see results? I believe that's what.
Well,
It's according to how bad the problem was to start with.
right, a week or so, for the oxygen.
2 weeks.
The nitrogen, almost, 2 or 3 days with water soluble. But the iron deficiency it takes longer.
James, as opposed to guessing, we do have soil analysis forms. You can take a soil sample and in about 24 hours get the results back once A&M gets it. So y'all are welcome to take some and send your soil sample in, and that'll help you identify problems without having to experiment on your own plants.
One of the things, things like when you add sulfur to try to counter a pH issue, that takes weeks.
Take a blue cycle.
Yeah, probably 6-7 weeks. Anybody else?
Thank you, James.